Have you ever wondered why we take birth again and again? Why does a soul come to this world again and again, take different bodies, and then is forced to return again after death? According to Paramahansa Yogananda, birth is not just a coincidence or a game of fate, but it is the result of our karmas, desires, and inner tendencies. Until the soul is completely purified and attains unity with the divine, it has to take birth again and again. The reason for birth is mainly related to three forces: bondage of karmas, unfulfilled desires, and attraction of the material world. Every birth gives the soul a new opportunity to learn and grow, but if we consider this world as everything and remain entangled in it, then this cycle continues for eternity. Yogananda says that the soul cannot be free until it understands the real reasons for its birth and moves towards salvation. Paramahansa Yogananda has clarified in his spiritual knowledge that every person definitely suffers the consequences of his actions. He said that this universe is governed by the law of a deep balance, which we know as the law of balance. The principle of karma says that this rule is completely fair and does not discriminate against anyone. Yogananda explains that whatever we think, speak, and do, it gets stored in the universe in the form of energy, and when the time comes, we get its fruits. The deeds of our previous births also affect our present life. If someone is getting comforts or troubles from birth, then it means that they are the result of the deeds of his previous birth. The soul remains trapped in this karma cycle from birth to birth until it attains complete divine knowledge and attains salvation or unity with God. He also explained that doing bad deeds not only affects this life, but the soul has to face struggle in the next birth as well. But if a person follows the path of true devotion, meditation, and service, then he can reduce the effect of his bad deeds and move towards spiritual liberation. That is why Yogananda's message is that we should be aware of our deeds. Every work should be done on the basis of love, kindness, and truth, because this will lead us to peace and spiritual progress in the future. Unfulfilled desires and reincarnation. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, the repeated birth of the soul in this world is due to its unfulfilled desires. As long as a person has a desire for material pleasures, wealth, respect, and other worldly things, he cannot attain salvation. These desires keep the soul bound in this world and force it to be born again. Every human being desires something or the other in his life: wealth, fame, love, power, or other material pleasures. But when these desires are not fulfilled, they leave a deep impression in the mind. This impression remains in our conscious and subconscious mind and does not end even after death. As a result, the soul has to be born in a new body so that it can fulfill those desires. This cycle continues until the soul is completely free from desires. Paramahansa Yogananda also explained that not only material desires but also incomplete sadhana of spiritual development can cause rebirth. If a person is in search of God but leaves his efforts incomplete, then his soul is born again so that it can complete his sadhana. Therefore, he taught that we should learn to control our desires and move our consciousness away from material things and towards God. When a man completely conquers his desires and aspires to connect only with the divine, then only he can get liberation from the cycle of birth and death and attain salvation. Effect of Maya and bondage of the soul. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, this world is only an illusion called Maya. Maya is the power that keeps the soul entangled in the material world and forces it to accept it as reality. In reality, this world is a temporary and changing place, but the soul considers it permanent and starts finding happiness and peace in it. This illusion forces the soul to take birth again and again. Due to the influence of Maya, man forgets that he is not only a mortal body but an eternal soul. This Maya keeps him entangled in wealth, fame, relations, and worldly pleasures. When a person considers these things as the ultimate goal of life, he gets away from his true nature. Even after death, his desires and feelings do not end, but the soul has to take birth again to fulfill them. Yogananda explains that Maya, the only way to escape the influence of Maya, is to attain self-realization. When man tries to know God through meditation and satsang, he gradually starts coming out of the illusion of Maya. As his consciousness reaches a higher level, he starts seeing this material world as a drama, and the desire to separate from it awakens. When the soul is completely free from the influence of Maya and starts seeing its happiness only in God, then it gets freedom from the cycle of birth and death. This is the real salvation in which the soul recognizes its eternal form and attains true happiness and peace. Incomplete journey of self-realization and reincarnation. According to Paramahansa Yoga, self-realization is the ultimate goal of life. Self-realization means knowing your true nature, understanding that we are not only this body, but our pure eternal soul, which is a part of God. Until a person does not fully attain this knowledge, his spiritual journey remains incomplete, and he has to continue it in the new birth. Many people try to follow the spiritual path, but due to various obstacles, they do not reach self-realization completely. Worldly attractions, material desires, ego, and laziness distract them from true knowledge. When a person starts sadhana in this birth but is unable to complete it, his soul starts its journey again from the same level in the next birth. This is the reason why some people have spiritual inclination from birth itself. This is the result of their sadhana of previous birth. Yogananda also said that deep sadhana, meditation, and constant remembrance of God is necessary to achieve self-realization. The person who walks on this path with full devotion and tries to be free from his ego and desires, finally gets free from the cycle of birth and death and attains unity with God. But until this experience is complete, the soul has to take birth again and again, so that it can complete its incomplete journey and attain the state of supreme bliss. Sanskars of previous life and new birth. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, every person brings with him the sanskars, desires, habits, and karma of his previous births. These sanskars decide how his next birth will be, what experiences he will get, and what will be his nature. This is the result of nature. There is an unshakable rule that whatever we have accumulated in our previous life determines our present and future circumstances. When a person repeats a particular tendency, habit, or desire again and again, it leaves a deep impression on his mind. If he follows a particular thought and action throughout his life, then the same feelings and desires go with his soul to the next birth. For example, if a person was very kind and charitable in his previous birth, then these qualities will naturally appear in him in the next birth also. On the other hand, if someone had made negative habits, anger, or greed a part of his life, then those tendencies will remain in his new birth also. Yogananda tells that these sanskars can be changed. If a person tries to improve his bad habits and negative tendencies and purifies his mind through meditation and sadhana, then he can make his future birth also better. But until a person is not free from the bad sanskars accumulated within him, he remains trapped in the cycle of rebirth. The soul is free only when it eliminates all the old sanskars and recognizes its true divine form and establishes unity with God. Distance from God and the cycle of rebirth. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, the natural place of the soul is with the Supreme Soul, but when it turns away from God and gets entangled in the material world of illusion, it has to come again and again in the cycle of birth and death. This cycle continues until the soul becomes one with the Supreme Soul. It is just like a river keeps flowing through different paths until it meets the ocean. In life, man gets so entangled in his ego, desires, and worldly attachment that he forgets his real form. He considers material pleasures, family, wealth, fame, and desires related to the body as everything. But all these things are mortal and cannot give permanent peace to the soul. This delusion forces the soul to take birth again and again, so that it can correct its mistakes and recognize the ultimate truth. Yogananda teaches that distance from God is the root cause of human sufferings. Until the soul experiences the love and light of God, it remains incomplete and dissatisfied. Through the process of meditation, devotion, and self-inquiry to know oneself, man can gradually move towards God as his consciousness reaches a higher level. As the soul reaches the material world, it starts getting free from the cycle of birth and death. Ultimately, when the soul completely removes its identity from materialism and establishes it in God, then it attains complete salvation. This is the ultimate goal of life, to become one with God where only eternal peace, happiness, and love exist. Enjoyment and attachment are the powers that bind the soul. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, as long as the soul is trapped in worldly enjoyment and attachment, it is forced to take birth again and again. This world attracts the soul due to its glitter and momentary pleasures, but these pleasures are not permanent. Still, man remains entangled in the desire to get and maintain these pleasures. This attachment pulls the soul again and again to this world. Enjoyment means pleasure of the senses, good food, wealth, physical pleasure, prestige, and material wealth. When a man considers these things to be the purpose of life, then he takes birth again and again to enjoy them. But with every birth, new desires are born, and this cycle never ends. Like a person tries to quench his thirst by drinking salty water of the sea. Similarly, by running after enjoyment, the thirst of the soul is never quenched, rather it increases. It means deep attachment to relationships and material things. Love for parents, children, family, society is natural. But when this love takes us away from self-realization and entangles us in the temporary relationships of the world, then it becomes attachment. Due to attachment, man is not able to get free from the pain of separation from loved ones even after death, and tries to get the same relationships again by taking birth again. Yogananda tells that the only way to get freedom from enjoyment and attachment is self-realization. When a person understands that true happiness lies in God and not in the world, then he starts rising above worldly desires. By meditating and immersing himself in the love of God, the soul gradually gets free from the bondage of enjoyment and attachment. When the soul is completely free from these bonds, only then it can get free from the cycle of birth and death and merge into the Supreme Being. This is the ultimate truth of life and the path to liberation. The mistake of considering the body as soul and rebirth. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, the biggest mistake of man is that he considers himself as the body, whereas his true form is the soul. This illusion is the reason for the cycle of birth and death. As long as the soul considers itself limited to the body only, it is bound to take birth again and again in this physical world. The body is mortal, but the soul is immortal. Still, man considers the pleasures and pains of this physical body as his real existence. He feels hungry, feels pain, gets old, and finally dies. But these do not affect the soul. When a person considers the physical experiences related to his body as his reality, he gets trapped in worldly desires, fear, and attachment. This knowledge does not allow him to be free even after death, and the soul returns to take a new body again. Yogananda says that the soul can be free from this cycle only when it recognizes its true form. Through meditation, yoga, and self-analysis, a person can understand that he is not a body but a part of God, pure consciousness, which is not bound by any birth or death. When the soul recognizes that it is beyond the body and is connected to God, then it can get free from the bondage of birth and death and attain salvation. This is the path of self-realization which every person should adopt in his life. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, birth is not just a bondage but also a precious opportunity for the soul. This world is like a school where the soul learns from its deeds, corrects its mistakes, and develops spiritually. Every life gives a chance to learn a new lesson and bring the soul closer to God. If a person sees his birth only as a cycle of happiness and sorrow, then he considers it a bondage. But the person who considers it an opportunity for self-development learns something from every situation and tries to improve his deeds. Difficulties and struggles are not just punishments, but means to test the soul and make it stronger. If a person accepts them with patience and dedication, then he gradually moves on the path of salvation. Yogananda explains that whatever experiences we get in life, good or bad, are the result of the deeds of our previous births, but in the present life, we can change our future by adopting the right path. Through meditation and service, we can purify the soul by eradicating our bad sanskars. This journey is the birth of the soul. It frees us from the cycle of death and takes us to salvation. Therefore, this life is not just an opportunity to enjoy pleasures or suffer, but to move towards self-realization. If we look at it from the right perspective and live with spiritual awareness, then this birth can become a means to unite us with God. The path of liberation is meditation, Kriya Yoga, and devotion. According to Paramahansa Yogananda, the soul remains trapped in the cycle of birth and death until it recognizes its true form. But the way to be free from it is also available. Through meditation, Kriya Yoga, and devotion, the soul can purify itself and meet the Supreme Soul. When the soul completely merges with the Supreme Soul, then it attains salvation, which is the final stage of getting out of the cycle of birth and death. Meditation gives the soul a means to travel within. When a person removes his attention from his senses and the external world and enters the inner peace, then he gradually starts experiencing his true form. Meditation frees the soul from worldly desires and illusions and brings it to the light of God. Kriya Yoga is a special spiritual practice which Yogananda has described as very important. It is an ancient yoga. It is a method by which a person can control his inner energy and take his consciousness to a higher spiritual level. By practicing Kriya Yoga, the soul gradually rises above the material world and enters the divine consciousness. The path of devotion is based on love and dedication. When a person leaves his ego and worships God with full faith and love, his mind becomes pure. There is no selfishness in true devotion. There is only a desire to unite with God. This love is the simplest and most effective method to connect the soul with God. Yogananda explains that by practicing these three paths, meditation, Kriya Yoga, and devotion correctly, the soul can be freed from the bondage of birth and death. When the soul is completely dedicated to God and erases the feeling of its separate existence, then it attains complete liberation and is established in supreme bliss. This is the path of salvation which every soul should adopt. Now the question is, can we be free from this cycle of birth and death? According to Paramahansa Yogananda, yes. Through meditation, Kriya Yoga, and devotion, the soul can recognize its true form and can merge with God by getting free from the bonds of this world. We can break out of this cycle only when we purify our karmas, rise above worldly desires, and move towards God. If you found this informative, like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and share this message to spread the message to others. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more such deeply spiritual and inspirational videos.